Patricia Boulogne, welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. This is my second show in as many days after having basically been on total hiatus for like the last 3 months. It seemed everything in the past month and a half, it was impossible to do a show because I was working peak package season of my jobs at UPS and FedEx, and that meant work lifting packages for 13 hours a day and then sleeping when I wasn't doing that. Didn't really have time for anything else. And even before that, some crazy things always turned up that always seemed to interfere with my ability to do some sort of a show, including things like entities toying with my mind and preventing me from knowing what time my show was actually supposed to start. Yeah, that happened once. But anyway, I'm very glad to have you on. Very glad you were willing to reach out to me to say that you want to come on. So without further ado, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself and explain who you are from a primary source perspective, what you do that causes you to do the stuff that you do. Like I usually say, I don't have Alex Jones-itis. I don't interrupt my guests much anyway. So I will keep my mouth shut. While you're speaking, knock yourself out. You got the floor.
Thanks a million. I appreciate that, Andrew. And I'm thrilled to be here on the first day of the year. And my goal today is to offer valuable information and to up level the mindset into 2025. I'm a high performance mastery mentor and coach and functional medicine doctor. I also have a lot strong background in lifestyle strategies. I'm an international bestseller, and I'm also the CEO and founder of my company called Health Team Network. We are dedicated to skyrocketing health and lifestyle and mindset with superior science-based solutions. And I love to share knowledge. I am passionate about it. A lot of times I give away way too much knowledge for free. But the point is that I always think that planting seeds and watering them appropriately gives you a healthy harvest. And by sharing that knowledge, I create and help people with solutions that make sense, that result in even better outcomes so that you can always be on your game at work, at home, and play. Everything that you need to do to have a better health and mindset. And also, this also speaks to people who are on the go, A-type personality people, high performance, situations that they want to achieve more health and happiness and have that mindset that gets them across the finish line again and again. And that my programs are very personalized, and they're very bio related to each individual, and they reflect the unique needs of those people. I look at no stone is unturned, even no matter how small it is or how large it is, and I look mind, body, and soul. I'm a team player who thrives on strategic solutions that are driven by faster, simpler, and safer evidence-based programs that keep you moving forward and realize your goals in less time. Now, you asked me a question about how all that gets me and like how, that got me to where I'm at today. And, I remember being when I was a kid, I don't think I played football, basketball, and baseball because my only playmates were boys for until I was 11 years old. So I grew up a healthy, definitely, athletic type of tomboy. So, the thing that, I had exposure to is my father had a strong background in science. He had a master's from the University of Detroit in Michigan for his electrical engineering degree. And he always would be, he was a good promoter and like a challenger to get me to think out of the box. And I had that fortunate leadership in my childhood to do that, to be an entrepreneur, to look at, like instead of looking at what the problem is exactly, but looking at like, this is it. How do you get out of this mess? How do we create a solution to get there? Which interests me in medicine. So I always played the doctor. I never played the nurse. I never had a patient die on me, and I've been practicing for over, she was, like 38 years now that I've had, personal exposure and licensure. I don't do anything silly. I always do things by common sense, what makes sense, and, pare it down to like what's simpler, safer, and that quicker solution driven type piece. Um, so when I was in college, I started college and I started working on an MBA, but I had the worst economics teacher in the world. Um, and it was so disheartening that, I dropped out of the master's program for my MBA. And I went back over to, looking at, so I decided to go to chiropractic school as opposed to going to a Western medicine medical school. I was working at the University of Michigan Hospital, and it occurred to me in my internship that I was doing there for, for a credit, for a college credit, is that nobody was getting better, and people were sick and they didn't know why they were sick. And the only happy ward in the whole hospital was the maternity ward. Um, so, I found that very disconcerting. And I had more than a few friends of mine that went to chiropractic school, and they kept on saying, "Oh, you should do this. I mean, you have all the prerequisites and the requirements for it. You should do this." And at one point in time, I was so disheartened when I left the University of Michigan Hospital one day that, I went home, made a phone call, applied to chiropractic school in Atlanta, Georgia, and never looked back. And the amazing thing is that when I went to school is that there were so many great chiropractors who had these techniques that they developed from, in their techniques. So there's, some of the chiropractic greats were like Dr. Pierce, Dr. Stillwagon, Dr. Thompson, Dr. Toughness. There was people like, Dr. Cox, who's still alive. He's someplace in Indiana or Illinois. And they had their techniques that they developed, and I had this fortunate ability to be able to study underneath them. And so, that was my benefit of going to school and learning then, because I learned from the masters. And, Dr. Frank and Dr. Scott Walker, who's still alive out in San Diego. It's just like I learned so many incredible things of how to turn somebody's health around. And I never looked back. But for all the things that, my father's, sometimes I thought his misgivings were really blessings, because when he challenged me, and it's like I didn't want to do it. I was so tired of studying science, that I wanted to do something else. It was really a blessing to have that, force behind me that kept on telling me that you can do it, you can do it. And, and I still have, the capacity. I'm working like part-time now, because I don't want to give up on people. And one of the ways that I didn't give up on them is that after I sold my business, I was on Cape Cod for 10 years. And after I sold my business, I moved to Boston. And I just saw so many people in a large city that had like nobody home looks on their face. They look, very pasty. They didn't look well. They were very stressed out. And, I kept on asking people, "Are you okay?" And because I had that downtime, and, I was on happy mode because I just sold my business. But in talking to people, I realized that I couldn't really leave that space, because that was not my calling. My calling was to help sick people get well, and well people to get even, better help and have even better results, so that they could live the life that they, wanted to live unapologetically.
Well, that's an excellent, excellent intro to set the tone for the rest of this. So where to start? You've got a lot of things to work with here. You call yourself a coach, connector, and a consultant. Now, when it comes to coaching, is this do you consider yourself a life coach who doesn't actually give advice, counterintuitive as that may seem? Because I used to be a coach voluntarily. After a year after I graduated high school, I came back as a coach on the track team, where I was a shot put and discus thrower to coach. Didn't get paid for it, but it was a fun little
Mm-hmm.
thing to do. But I gave advice to people all the time. And yet I hear that people who are life coaches, they're not supposed to actually give advice. They're just supposed to help guide the person so they can get advice for themselves and have epiphanies during the coaching session. Is that the kind of coach you are, or do you give advice?
I'm very interactive.
Hmm.
And so, it's just like on, the advice I don't tell people what to do, but I can highly suggest to them based upon my educational experience and what I've seen, um, in an office setting, in a clinical setting, where people get the best results. And so, I don't diagnose, like when I'm coaching or mentoring, I don't diagnose. That's not my job at that point. But my point is, just, like, here's where you're at, here's where you want to go. How committed are you to that? Like, when's the last time you felt really good? And when's the last time, that, you slept through the night? And, people have a huge problem. There's an epidemic and no sleep, and not eating well. And therefore, you don't think well. And it sets you up for dehydration and accidents and all sorts of things. And so, if you want to achieve a certain result in your life, you got to have a plan. And if you have to have a plan, then you got to take a look at how you get robust health, and you have to take a look at how you have robust mindset, because they work hand in hand. Sometimes they're 80-20, sometimes they're 50-50, sometimes they're 60-40, but you have to have that base foundation and know where your bottom line is. And if you, I mean, like my experience in talking to people, anywhere, anytime, is that many people do not know. They think they're healthy, but they're not. And or they have something brewing and they're just not paying attention to the signs and symptoms, or listening to their body, that there might be something else going on.
Thank you. And you call yourself a connector. I see all sorts of connections here on your Health Team Network where Results Matter logo here on the site. So many pictures. Not going to waste time with those pictures, saying what those pictures are. You can look on that site yourself, and I'll post a link to the site, of course, when I upload this. By the way, this is getting uploaded to YouTube and Cause.tv. Please, I'm going to ride the YouTube horse so it falls down dead, even though quite a few of my shows from the past have been kicked off YouTube for saying allegedly controversial stuff. How I haven't gotten kicked off YouTube yet is nothing short of a miracle. I don't know, maybe it's because I don't have enough subscribers to get kicked off, which is a blessing and a curse. I'd love to have more, but if I had more, it would be a problem. So, well, anyway, enough about me. You're a connector. So I just don't want you to want to get that out so you don't say anything that could jeopardize our chance to have this show on YouTube. Because if this show gets kicked off, I would definitely reach out to you to ask you if you want to come on again to get some justice for getting kicked off YouTube, just like I have with all the other people who
Mm-hmm.
got kicked off. But let's try to not let that happen by not saying anything here that would do that. So um, regarding being a connector, like I said, your picture connects a lot of dots, seemingly unrelated things, and you draw links to them in geometric shape that's been unfolded, it looks like. But out of curiosity, is that geometric shape there, is that really a geometric shape that's been unfolded to be on a two-dimensional surface in which you connect all the pictures there? Or is that just a random hodgepodge of lines and dots with images scattered on it?
Um, no, the images are very specific, that are on my website, that are up there, and there are icons that represent, those type of things that, I help people with, like, and as far as, and the idea of Health Team Network is that, not everybody is an expert who's in my, who you deal with. So if somebody needs to have support from, they need a digital support, they need, to wear a device, and there's a place to go to get that device from somebody who's a known trusted, entity or person, or to have that experience with them. When I'm doing like coaching, I never profess that I know everything, but I know enough. Like when I can't, when something is not in my wheelhouse, that I'll refer to somebody whose wheelhouse that it is in. Make sense?
Yes.
And so there's things like there, like for exercise, for sports, and for, people who are trainers, just like I have certification in sports medicine and rehabilitation, and as a functional medicine doctor, um, and, I have a lot of accolades. Anyone can find them on my website. They also can find them on LinkedIn, and or on Facebook, on my Facebook page. Um, and um, and so and by going to that, it's just like, you say, what do you got going on with you? Um, and then people say, like, well, I have this X, Y, and Z. And one of my mentors always said, and I mentioned his name, Dr. Frank, his line was, just because you have something doesn't mean it's that. You have to understand what the source of it is. You have to go back to the root cause of an issue, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, or social, and you have to fix it at that level so that it doesn't have a hold on your health or your mind. And so because those are things that get people stuck in being progressive in their life. So those icons on there have specific meanings, and and how the lines were drawn is the way that the designer did it. But they have, there's this thing that just like, you're And I also know, as far as the connector part that goes on a professional basis, I also connect, entities who are startups with people who are the appropriate people to put on their boards and also on their advisory boards. So I help with those kind of things.
Yes, and you have images here that suggest you are of all areas of the try to get all areas of the spectrum involved. You got a woman lifting weights, so you're all about building muscle is certainly beneficial for lots of people. And of course,
Hmm.
you got a image of a person meditating, a image of like what looks like cogs in a brain. It's kind of a small image, hard to make out, but and an image of DNA too. Um, now, and I think the most important image here is a picture of a hand holding a heart to never underestimate the
Hmm.
importance of the heart. Um, when it cut, now, it's the heart that you really want to go with in life. So say people like George Kavasilis, even though having a brain is great and all, in the end, it's not the mind is not the key feature. That one of my favorite movie scenes that also was kind of misleading in the first Ninja Turtles movie from 1990 when Leonardo realized that Splinter was still alive after Splinter had been kidnapped. He was still alive. He was meditating and he was able
Hmm.
to see Splinter. And then he gathered the Ninja Turtles in a campfire circle and they meditated and concentrated and were able to get a hold of Splinter through the mind. Well, he said it was through the mind, but I beg to differ. Splinter said, "I'm very proud of you, my sons. You have discovered that the ultimate mastery comes not of the body, but of the mind." Well, I think Splinter should have said, "Ultimate mastery comes not of the body or the mind, but of the heart." Maybe they were thinking that they were communicating with him through their minds. But in reality, if something like that would happen
Hmm.
in real life, and yeah, it's very possible to do something like that in real life, then he should have said, then it's really their hearts that they were communicating with. And George Cavazos said the pineal gland is in our mind. So yeah, the third eye is great. It's fun to use it, but you shouldn't concentrate all your effort on using it because you really want to go with the heart soul essence, which communicates all of us. So I guess for lack of a better question, do you agree or disagree with this about the heart being more important than the mind and being the center of where everybody should devote their attention?
I think they're both equally important. And the reason why I think that they're both equally important is because, the mind, there's a Chinese saying that, uh, it says like the mind houses the heart. And
Yep.
so, there's a Chinese phrase that goes, there's a ancient quote about that. And so if that's the case, then you have to take care of the mind. Like you've seen, people struggling going down the street who are homeless with red faces because there's so much heat coming from their heart and the sac around the heart is that it's surging towards the brain, which is affecting the brain and how it functions.
Hmm.
That's in Chinese medicine. The heart houses the mind.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was. I'm a little rusty with the radio because I've been off for so long. Yesterday, my show yesterday, I was pressing the unmute button, never realizing that I had been muted. So sorry if I seem a little rusty, folks. I'm still getting the knack of it. Being off, not practicing for a while can cause you to lose the knack for something. So not being able on the radio may cause me to seem a little rusty, but don't worry, I'll get the knack of it, folks. And I'm glad you pointed the whole thing out about how you think they're equal. Nobody is equal because if you try to make everybody equal, that results in communism, and that doesn't work as a system because that means that people who don't have experience or knowledge owning something and controlling it have just as much say in controlling it as those that do know how to have the knowledge and expertise in controlling it. Because so if everybody owns it, nobody owns it. So if everybody's equal, then nobody can be equal. But equal in the sense that we're all fractals of the same infinite consciousness fractal. So I guess you're definitely onto something there, saying that it shouldn't be thought of as one being more important than the other because even people in homeless people and people in vegetative states, there's still infinite consciousness, but the third dimensional level has been
Right.
suppressed. Yes.
Also, we can see, that there's a lot of, in this day and time, there's such a focus on empathy that, people forget how to like not to protect their energy, so that when when something traumatic happens and that shock value happens, then what happens is that, like shocks the heart, and in Chinese medicine, when you shock the heart, you can have a heart attack, or if you have if someone who's too overly empathetic. I had a teacher who, when I first started practicing, asked everybody that was, in this group, there's about 50, 75 people, something like that. And he goes, how many people, when you go home at the end of the day and you sit down, you start having what Mr. Jones and Miss Smith had, and, and other things of your patients, you can feel that same feeling still. And he said, if you don't protect your energy, then you're not going to be effectively be able to treat people because you will get the same thing that your patients have, and so you have to learn how to listen from a distance with a open heart, but not so that you're reactive to what you're hearing, because then you're not thinking correctly. You're not thinking in a straight mode. Does that make sense?
Indeed, it does. By the way, just a little disclaimer on my microphone. This is an audio video, and it's not going to be video because you don't have a camera. I just want to clarify if anybody hears like me, it sounds like I'm smoking something over the microphone because I didn't put on mute when I did it. I am not smoking crack. I am not smoking cannabis. I am smoking mapacho tobacco out of my mapacho pipe, which is great for purifying the energies and helping us speak in two dimensions to make it easier for people who are sheeple, for lack of a better word, to understand some of this complex stuff that we talk about here. Tobacco really does have that metaphysical property. So, got a couple comments from the past saying, "Does the house know we can hear him smoking something?" Well, don't get any bad ideas, folks. It's just mapacho tobacco.
I can hear
All right.
it.
Well, I'll try to put myself on mute so you don't hear me flicker the lighter. But anyway, the where to go from here? Oh yes, I see you have a picture of what looks like the food guide pyramid on your image. Now, I like the pyramid, but I don't like the food guide image because that food guide thing where they taught us the six groups of foods, where they put breads at the like is the most important one. Bread, cereal, rice, and pasta at the bottom is flat out the wrong way to do it. Anybody who follows the keto diet, Dave Champion, the author of Income Tax: Shattering the Myths, also wrote Body Science, talking about how keto is one of the best diets you could probably do in terms of keeping your body healthy because the body is not supposed to be in a glucosis state for optimal health. It is supposed to be in a ketosis state, and that means that it's actually a good thing to make fats a huge part of your diet. Yeah, he says fats are very important. You don't really need a lot of protein. You do, but you don't. It's overrated the amount you need it because your body naturally makes it. Um, Unless, of course, maybe you're lifting weights, then you definitely want to increase your protein intake if you truly are intend on building muscle. But it's the carbs that what you want to avoid. Fats are not harmful. Carbs are what's harmful. So, sorry, sorry if this makes you look, if think this makes you look bad by pointing out that your image there is you got the wrong image there. But the
But
food guide
it's just an
pyramid,
image.
what?
It's just an image. It's just an image of a pyramid, and it's the idea of there's a lot of different pyramids that are out there, and there's a freedom of choice about like what kind of diet that you follow. I disagree with you on the keto diet because the keto diet, especially for women over 40, it affects whatever food that you eat affects you hormonally. And so the idea of like how much protein, fat, and carbohydrates that you actually need is based upon your activity level, it's based upon your sex, is based upon your body measurements. And so it's like piecing that protein, fat, and carbohydrate piece together will differ from person to person based upon their needs, and also based upon their health. So the image in and of itself is just a pyramid, that and does have some things that are on it, and does have, it's very small. So if someone can see like if they go to blow it up and they can see that. But there's different pyramids that are out there, and there's different. It's just the idea of balancing your food, and there really wasn't a better icon in order to do that when I made this chart with all this, all these lines and networking pieces of the puzzle going together because they all work together as in unison, and everything's connected. Does that make sense?
Um, I was on mute. I was unmuted. Didn't realize it. Yes, yes, it does make sense. Now, yeah, I'm not going to argue with you that the keto diet may not be the best one for everybody. Dave Champion lifts a lot of weights and tries to stay fit, even though he's past 60 now. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
now one other thing about the keto diet that's kind of controversial is the fact that he does advise eating a lot of meat. And of course, anybody who, a lot of spiritual people would flat out say that it's wrong to eat meat, not just because you're eating an animal, but because the human body really isn't supposed to be supposed to be eating meat. Now, another conflict of I heard on this is that even though humans are the only animal in the primate family that eats meat, um, Dr. Joel Wallach had on his show way back in the day. On my show back in the day, he said that human digestive system is more of that of a bear than it is of that of a primate. So, in fact, he actually said that it's kind of silly that dogs are man's best friend. People, if they want their best friend to be their pet, then they should have pigs as their best friend because pigs are, well, they're kind of like they are related to bears in some regard,
Mm-hmm.
and well, they seem to some they if our digestive system is like that of a bear, then it's well like that of a pig, I guess, in a sense. So, well, I don't know, maybe I'm connecting unrelated things here, but the point is, um, regarding whether or not you should eat meat or not, and whether it's spiritually unhealthy, and if it is spiritually unhealthy, then where are the keto people making the claim that it is healthy for your 3D body? Is it more maybe I'm having an epiphany here. Keto diet is one of the best diets for a 3D mindset to get through the hardships of this 3D reality. But if you want to get spiritual, it may not be the best diet if you want to go above
Well,
40.
there's a lot of different diets. There's paleo, there's keto, there's Mediterranean. And Mediterranean isn't a specific diet; it's a style of eating. Um, but what I found that works best for most people is the Mediterranean diet because then, it's just like some people handle carbohydrates well, other people don't. And majority of people don't handle carbohydrates well. And if they have a carbohydrate metabolism problem, then they also have a fat metabolism problem. If they have a fat metabolism problem, then they're going to have circulatory problems, and the list goes on. So, but having, that, from one of the things that Barry Sears did, and he was a front runner in, doing like his diet was called the Zone Diet, and the Zone Diet's a great diet, except that he doesn't really food combine very well. But it's looking at like what your the value of protein is in your body, and like and how much do you need. So somebody who is less active, they don't need as much protein. And then you can qualify the proteins, eating lean proteins. I mean, a lot of people eat grass. They go, oh, I bought grass fed, Well, I don't care about grass fed. I care if grass fed is grass fed finished. Because a lot of times when, meat goes um, to market, it's really puffed up and they feed it grain before that happens, whether it's organic grain or not. But it's just like, just because something's grass fed, the majority of it, which is better than the other type of meat, which has a lot of hormones, pumped into it and also antibiotics and things like that. So, always buying organic and always having access to lean, healthy meats is important. And, I don't see anything wrong with eating meat personally. And, I had a woman about a year ago, who was the wife of a friend of mine or colleague of mine. And, she asked me why I wasn't on a vegan diet because she thought everyone should be on a vegan diet. And I said, every diet, I said, and I said to her, I go, there might be the person who's like, I would never recommend a vegan diet for if you can't metabolize carbohydrates or have a hard time metabolizing them or don't know how to, to get to balance them out between the protein, fats, and carbohydrates and other micronutrients that you need. And then, it's not for you, and so, and eating meat, it's people who, are prone to have diabetes or, one third of the population in the United States is supposed to be pre-diabetic. That's really a bad stat. And by following certain diets, I mean, if you remember back, like in the 60s, they said like, don't eat meat, it's going to kill you, or fat's going to kill you, and as you said, that's not the problem. The problem is, carbohydrates and how you match or mismanage, there's more mismanaging of those carbohydrates with a balanced diet and things that really promote, energy, clear thought, no brain fog, no gut issues, and you're, metabolizing things also. There's also the issue of like when you're eating foods and having, that are laden with chemicals, or products that you use. I mean, because you can get toxicity from the air that you breathe, the water you drink, the food that you eat, the cleaning chemicals that you have exposure to, and your gardening chemicals. those can kill you. And if you don't, so being mindful about what you have around you and for your environmental health, and also what you are putting in your body, it's crucial to understand what that balance is and be able to pick out what is good and what is bad, and being able to do the research. So I highly recommend people always to do the research on that.
Yes, indeed. Do research. Now, one thing I'd like to do a little research on, or have you spew out the research that I would do, I should say, is this interesting thing I'm seeing on your site on the homepage on the bottom, a video. It says Grim Reaper syndrome involving shortness of breath, increased urination, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and it's interesting you have constipation, diarrhea here both at the same time. I'd like to get into that maybe specifically, even though it's not kind of a disgusting subject. It's interesting. I've heard some people actually say that constipation is another form of diarrhea, and I'm like, what? They're the exact opposite. And and then they have, I'm thinking, and at the bottom you have pain, which is kind of cliche, but hey, any sort of an illness is bound to have some sort of
Well,
thing. Okay, what is Grim Reaper syndrome?
Green Reaper syndrome are some signs and symptoms that you have in your body that you don't pay attention to. So, for instance, people have, at some certain age, mostly for men at 40, and for women, I would say around 35. There's a lot of premature aging going on, and it hits people below the age of 35. And if you look at what I call Grim Reaper syndrome, and it's like having signs and symptoms that you don't pay attention to. So, for instance, people will ask me, "Hey, Dr. Pat, I've been eating lately, and I've just been having like, oh my God, I have so much bloating." And then, if I go to sleep, I don't sleep well, and then I wake up and, it takes me like 3 cups of coffee to get going. Excuse me. So my question to them is like, you got to take a look at what you're eating. You got to take a look at what's going on in your gut. But a lot of people will ask like their mother. I mean, it's just like people like, I even asked my mother, and she goes, oh, I had that when I was your age. It passes. And then suddenly you're 5 years later and you still have the problem. It hasn't gotten any better. In 1996, there's a stat that I read at that time, and I haven't researched it back out, but it said the average person at the age of 50 is up to 5 prescription meds, and that's pretty astounding. And you have to and then what happens is when someone takes a medication, they're taking care of that one problem. And Dr. Mayo of Mayo Clinic always said, what is medicine for one person could be poison to the next. So it's just, and because they standardize a lot of care in Western medicine, and in alternative medicine, you don't do that. You're treating the individual, and you're not treating them, you're not treating a herd. You're treating the individual. So that Grim Reaper syndrome, is like when you're just not paying attention, and all of a sudden you've got a crisis. And a lot of people don't pay attention to their health. Why? I don't know. But if I knew that, eating, sugar creates pain, or my last meal that I ate, I wake up and I'm more stiff in the morning because I didn't pay attention to the foods that I'm eating, then, it's just like I'm creating inflammation in my body. And something that all chronic illnesses and diseases have is that they have inflammation, whether it's cancer, whether it's diabetes, whether it's heart disease, whether it's high blood pressure, whether it's gastritis, which itis means an inflammation. So when you have pain, it's telling you have inflammation, and it's not a lifestyle. It is a situation that needs to have attention, or your body's like shouting at you and saying, "Yo, buddy, pay attention to me over here." But just because you got pain in your shoulder doesn't mean it's coming from your shoulder, and a lot of people who have, one of the pathognomic signs, or the signs and symptoms of ovarian cancer, is unexplained shoulder pain. And I had a coach a couple of years ago who, when I met him one day for coffee in the morning, and so we're like sitting there, and he goes, I just have this pain, in my right upper, like underneath my collarbone. And I just can't, he said, no matter what I do, it doesn't seem to get better, and so, and then I adjusted him A couple of weeks before that, he goes, even your adjustment you gave me lasted like a couple of days, but then it didn't seem like it was better. And I don't use any force techniques. I do body balancing. And so he said, so that day, that I was looking at him, he goes, can you take a look at it? And I do kinesiology. So I just said to him, you have something wrong in your upper lobe on your right side. And he was going in for a CAT scan that day for his annual that he was going in for. And they found that his upper lobe on his right side of his body was stage 4 lung cancer. And I said, I go, you have something bigger going. That's what I said to him. You have something bigger going on. There's something in your upper lobe. And I said, make sure, I said, when they do the CAT scan, that they do a focus image on that area. And so, that was sad news to get, because he was, and he tried, something that was, he tried an alternative, medical method, not an alternative medicine, but alternative medical method that they were trying at that time to see if they could get the cancer under control, and they had a little bit of success for a while, and then it came back with a double vengeance, which I think a lot of people who have had cancer can say that that's pretty much a norm, unless, it depends upon what kind of cancer is and where it's located at or where it started at. So for instance, when cancer starts in the liver, those markers for that are called Adam 7, Adam 9, or I don't remember, but it's Adam something. It's just like, it's not a pretty picture. Neither is pancreatic cancer. Everyone knows that. You could see that with Steve Jobs. It's just like that. It's like, and it's not a way to end your life, voluntarily. But that we have to be mindful, I think, about those pieces of the puzzle and those signs and symptoms that we have, because a lot of times we want to be in denial and say like, oh, it will go away, and you hope it goes away, but it doesn't. And then it's back. So that's where, being mindful of that mind, bodies, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and where that's at. When we have 3 brains in our body, and that are how our brains function. So they have a primitive brain, which is the lizard brain, and you have a mammalian brain, which stores all your emotions and, imprints of things that happened to you from the time that you were conceived. And then you have a conscious brain. So what I'm talking with right now is my conscious brain. That's where people say you should do your affirmations like, I am healthy, vital, active, successful human being, and then you have the mammalian brain that records all that information, so that when and it tells you how, when this situation happened before, this is what happened, and it stores it somewhere in your body. So if you had and you can have that trigger go off if similar situation happens that elicit the same type of feeling or impact towards your body. So like if you have, for like as a, maybe as a lack of an example, like you end up like, why is it that I always date, bad guys? And it's just like when you meet that person, your mammalian brain's going, hey, this looks familiar, and it always feels good because that's the way that it always went. But when things start going bad, your brain starts going like the mammalian brain's, firing, going like, oh, here we go again, here we go again. And then your body goes into a certain physical response based upon that, whether it's, that example, or, you drive in a big city. Every time I drive in a big city, I always feel like someone's going to pull out in front of me, and they do, and so, and it always gives you that fear, like fight or flight piece, which is part of the primitive brain, and the lizard brain, that it's like always trying to protect you. And it's very rudimentary in that regard, so it's like, save me from the saber-toothed tiger, save me from the guy who just pulled out in front of me, and it also is for replication, so that, a lot of times you're thinking like, what brain am I thinking with, and that's that brain. And that, but the lizard brain tells mammalian brain, it's going, oh, there's that guy. So if you want to change that message, what you have to do is when you start, that same feeling comes through, and the lizard's brain going like, oh, here's a good guy, here's a good guy. And your mammalian brain's going like, oh, here's this memory of this. Your conscious brain is saying like, I don't think so. It's just like, looks good, feels good, but it had, have the same kind of feeling that I had before. And training your body to respond to those things in a more positive way puts better information in the mammalian brain. And that's what they use as the holy grail for marketing. So that the idea is to take you away from pain to pleasure and change the message that the mammalian brain is storing so it no longer stores those negative things within your body. That's my
Yeah,
that's pretty intense.
yes, indeed. Now, I want to get into some of the work with Dr. Pat's stuff. Regarding corporate training, well, first of all, seeing the word corporate might turn off a few eyes. No offense or anything. It's just that, just like with a pyramid, you think maybe a better pyramid would be better, maybe a better word than corporate. It's just that corporate, people think of the corporation, that's the evil force that's trying to rule the world today. They're not going to be able to. The powers that be system has lost much control over time, and maybe the word on the street is 2025. They're going to hit us with a kitchen sink, and it's all going to fail miserably. So that's both good, but I mean bad, but good in the end. Not that the whole year is going to be really bad, but it's going to be a wild ride because they're going to throw the kitchen sink at us. The corporations are. So, but when you say corporate training, you don't. I'm sure you don't mean that you're going to want to turn someone into an evil corporate entity. No, it's not like that. It's some other kind of corporate that you're talking about here.
Well,
Sorry, what do you have to say?
I wrote an article, about a year and a half ago on, being people like, IBM sent so many people home, to work out of their houses. And when the pandemic came around, it's just like they sent even more people home. And at that time, IBM was trying to put people back into the office because they found that people were much more productive in the office and much more creative. And so what they did at that time, corporate decided to offer people new computers, tables, workstations, and things like that to buy them, and to actually buy them. And then but there's no corporate camaraderie, or there's a lack of it. So there was a disbelief and disenchantment with corporation because they didn't take in the mind, body, and the mental wellness of individuals. So what my program focuses on is helping corporations identify where their strengths and their weaknesses are at, and the health of people who are working with them on a very simplistic level, and then take that health and create more robust health, and also take that mindset so that they can have, they can go into a room or a station, for instance, like, what's coming across my mind right now, or they would go in and they could take a 10-minute break with dark lighting with earphones on and doing a short meditation, or also like the other part for corporate wellness for me is that, like working with people who have conflict issues, that type of thing in a corporation, and then being the liaison between, that working class and the corporate, so that there's where's your imbalance, identifying it, and like creating what are the solutions so that you have higher retention rate, and you also have a higher performance and more productivity, and then setting that up for a better work situation. So that's how I think about corporate training, and professional impact, so that people can even improve even more. That's why the
Thank you.
corporate wellness is on here.
Well, thank you for clarifying. And also, concierge mastermind. Now, concierge, that's well, one occupation there. Isn't that the guy who is at the front desk of a hotel or motel? But when you're saying concierge mastermind, you're not specifically, I'm sure, saying have the mastermind if someone works at the front of a hotel room desk. It's a lot more complicated than that, so complex than that. So, what is concierge mastermind all about?
Well, concierge mastermind is like when, um, it's just like people get to a certain level and they don't need babysitting anymore, and so when they get to that level and they get into, or they're at that level and they're in a mastermind level, what they're looking for is that people, like I say, I have a quote there from Napoleon Hill that says, a friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage one to follow through with both plans and purpose. So it's about aligning, your desires, your wants, and your actions. So you minimize, conflict between your career and your personal and professional life. And so that mastermind is about, for some people, it could be about nutrition. It could be your go-to person, in what you're speaking to in regards to that. For other people, it could be, they're planning out their quarters of the year, and going and then doing, like creating a functional, like step one, step two, step three, in order to, to get there, or, and also in some mastermind communities, there's that, being the connector. It's just like, you want to do this, or you like, where do I find, this product? I've had people ask me that. And we talk about, like, like what can you do, to, if you're going to retain some level of elite status, then you have to be able to have some place to go that you can, ask questions that you can, get them answered.
Thank you very
So
much.
that's,
Yep,
that's that part.
that's what that's about. Concierge mastermind, right? Now, looking at some of the things you try to help people with, optimal mindset, whole health, stress management, weight loss, right diet, exercise, and last one, targeted supplementation. I want to talk about this for a little bit because well, there was the whole controversy regarding steroids in baseball. In baseball, well, some people say that that's not supplementation; that's outright doping. There's a difference. Well, I don't know. One could debate that, but now, when it comes to private organizations, you sign up for a league, professional league that says you cannot do steroids. We'll test you for it. Okay, you've signed a contract. Nothing. There's no debating whether it's right or wrong. It's wrong because you signed a contract that said that it's wrong as long as you're working for them. All right. But as far as the general perspective of what the government has authority to regulate, no, the laws that make drugs illegal are not actually laws. They're what is considered to be public policy, and well, the same would be true with anabolic steroids. But there are other supplements that are perfectly fine. Well, in terms of the law anyway, what is considered to be public policy. But yes, there's controversy around them, and I, well, am guilty, if I will, of taking one of those when I was in high school as a football player and a shot put and discus thrower. I had my own secret weapon supplement, and that was creatine. And that was during a time when creatine had a lot of crazy uproar on the internet about it. They alleged that there was research lacking about creatine, even though you could go to almost any site that sold it that tried to back up its sales claims by citing actual studies that said that creatine was relatively safe. Well, they all say, well, they're trying to sell their product. Well, of course they are, but if they cite their thing, then what's the debate about? Are you then you don't question the company, you question the thing they cited. And with creatine, though, even the physician's desk reference asserted research is lacking, and this was in my time, when like 2002, 2003, and there were so many people on the internet that had made comments about creatine, saying that it caused them multiple emergency room visits into the hospital. But there were so many other people who commented saying, I took creatine and I made sure to stay hydrated. One little thing about creatine and urine color: if your urine is yellow, you're a screwed fellow. If your urine is clear, then you're in the clear. That's a way of saying you need to drink enough water when you're taking creatine, and if your urine is yellow, well, then you could have problems because creatine will not be effective, and if there's any danger of side effects, be it muscle cramping or kidney problems or whatever, that's not going to come up unless you don't drink. But if you drink to keep your urine clear all the time, as long as you take creatine, I think it was 5 grams a day I took, you're going to be just fine. And I was just fine. Never had a single problem with it at all, and I saw nothing but good results. And not only that, it's kind of hard to say the creatine is a performance-enhancing drug because you take creatine every time you eat meat. In fact, red meat has the most creatine of any meat. People in Argentina who eat tons and tons of beef, they take more creatine than probably the average person in America who supplements with it. So this idea that supplementation, it's controversial for the reasons I've just gotten into, and creatine was very much the case in my day. And whether or not it's okay to take it or not, regardless of what the law and the public policy says, how do you help people determine what supplements they should target to take? And when you see controversy like this that you see for creatine, well, simply saying do your own research. Oh yeah, easier said than done when there's so much conflict out there. Personally, I think a lot of that conflict about creatine, people who saw creatine as a performance-enhancing steroid, and similar to steroids, a poor man's steroid, if you will, I should say, and because they saw it in the same class as steroids, they decided to shun it. So I babbled long enough. What have you got to say about targeted supplementation and how to see what's good and bad for you?
Well, my I have a two-time bestseller, "Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired?" that I wrote. One is the sequel to the first one, and it is called "Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired?" And it is a book of questions that targets all the organ systems of the body, and tells you whether or not you have a low, moderate, or high priority. So the idea of it is to look at it increases your awareness about your health. It increases your visibility when you look at your chart to see where you're at, and where you want to go and where you should pay attention to. So you're using your time, your resources, and your energy wisely, and you're not, chasing, the golden horse someplace else. So the targeted supplementation for me relates to how, like, what supplementation do I need to take to improve my gut, to improve my liver, to improve my endocrine system. If that's an issue, and you have to take a look at, one of the things that's becoming a Chinese doctor is that you look at patterns in people's patterns in their health. So you look at like what patterns going on. This is a tool, and a resource. It's an advocating tool, and it's also like a workbook and a guidebook to take you from point A to get you to Z in the shortest time possible, that's safest. But then you will know exactly what organ system needs to have attention, and then you can target supplementation for that organ system to foster it, so that the rest of your organ systems, everything's related, is can balance out. So in that piece, and looking at that, in my book, there's an opportunity for somebody. There's a chart that you would fill out, and you could see what your pattern was, and you can take that chart. You can come to me. You can take that chart and go to your doctor as long as he understands that. I had many people read through my questions on that in that book, medical doctors, in different specialities and that were involved in it, because it's an intense organ system questionnaire. And nobody ever said like that's a bad question. And in fact, somebody who I know, a physician friend of mine who had prostate cancer, he said, he goes, I can't give you enough accolades. He said, before I had my problem. And he said, I would have like, 00000, like on your, questionnaire. He goes, but it goes, every question that you asked in relationship to that issue, he said, it was right on. It was right on target. He said, he goes, you did a great job. And so, he gave me an accolade, for the book, an acknowledgement for it, that I put in my book, of course, leaving out his personal story. But at any rate, when I look at targeted supplementation, I'm looking at something really specific. I'm looking at like going from point A to point B. If you want to have a health hack, to how to improve, muscle mass, performance, and energy while you're working out, that's a different story. But this is specifically for me, targeted supplementation, and even for the NIH, who defines lifestyle medicine by using targeted supplementation, and they found that more effective than doing Western medicine for things, because they do nutrition first, food is medicine, and then you do the targeted supplementation, and then you assess where you're at, and then you can, dive and delve deeper into a person's situation, and then make better, recommendations from that and that. But the book is available on Amazon, by the way, and it's a great book for especially a day like today, where you're assessing your health, where your health is at and where you want to go in 2025. Because my rule has always been, and it's more pronounced in 2025, we can do it better. And you can do it better. You can always do something to improve where you're at.
Yes, and not 2025, a 9 universal year numerologically speaking. After this interview is done, I'm actually going to do my horoscope readings for both this month and the whole entire year. And it's a two personal year for me, but a 9 universal year for everybody. And 9 is about completion.
Yes.
Not a great year for starting things new, but completing everything that needs completion and getting your weak links out, which is basically what is going to happen on a global scale anyway, with the system of domination control throwing the kitchen sink in us, throwing this the end of their possibility possible ideas. Their ideas are going to come to an end, and so this is the last year we probably have to deal with them at a on a global scale to start the one year that'll be 2026, which will be a fresh start in many ways for a lot of people, but you can't get there unless you do your part. Now, one thing that you definitely need to, by the way, we've got about 8 minutes to go, so let's cover maybe one or two more subjects, and then I'll let you close with anything you like. So, stress management, definitely an important subject to talk about here. Um, because if you're stressed out, you're gonna have problems. Now, I need to ask a personal thing about this because to tell you the truth, I'm the kind of guy that sort of likes being mad. I don't want to be mad at people. I don't like being mad at people. I don't like people can be uncomfortable by being mad at them. But when I say I like being mad, it's kind of the way that Alex Jones likes being mad. That feeling of like you have an iceberg on you and you need to use great strength to get that iceberg off, and giving a strength of anger and hate to get it off seems to help. And also that sense of anger and hate, if you're dominating that at the system of domination and control, to shut it down, definitely important this year if this is their last year. So, but anyway, some say you're giving them power when you show anger to them. But no, I argue that that's only if I intend to use my anger to like for personal gain and publicity, like maybe then no, I'm not giving them power unless I intend to give them power. If my intention is to shut them down, then it's okay to be angry at them if for the sake of shutting them down. But either way, if you show a little anger, you're going to show stress. I've got my own secret weapon for that that actually came in very handy during peak package season. That's a meditation ring, one of those rings that has a couple of bands that you put the ring on your index finger and you twist the bands that are loose with your thumb. And I've actually discovered that seems to have definitely good qualities because I was using that all through peak package season in the time that I wasn't working and sleeping, and it really did seem to help me relax a little better, especially since I was taking more caffeine during that time to keep me going. It definitely came in handy to keep the negative effects of the caffeine at bay. But as long as you're stressed, there's going to be problems. Even the people like Alex Jones who try to show anger to for the sake of defeating the system of domination and control. Hey, as long as the stress and anger is causing some sort of a problem, then one could argue there's definitely a better way to do it. So, any comments on stress management and how you deal with it?
Well, what I instruct people to do is, I said there's different ways, like stress management is key. And I teach a course called, 15 Minutes to Ageless Vitality, which is a facial exercise program that improves your health, improves your posture, and reverses, your face, in an easy, like up to 5 to 10 years within 9 weeks. And it's long lasting because you're actually exercising the muscle and the fascia that's on your face. There's 15 muscles that attach to the face. And so, I teach that, specifically in that class because that mindset piece is really important with the stress management. And the simple thing that people can do is just breathe. I mean, but, I had a patient that I saw a couple of weeks ago, and I had him do this technique that I do for body balancing. And I said, breathe in. And it was more like that kind of breathing in, as opposed to breathing in like, it doesn't. I said, you're not breathing with the top part of your lungs. I said, you got to breathe with the the bottom of your belly, and that was a new concept for him. And so it was like, 2 weeks of, like working with him, like on better breathing, and when you do that, you handle stress better. You also get better oxygen into your system so you can make better red blood cells, for instance. And so, the breathing thing is really easy. There's meditations that you can do. There's a lot of people out there. There's mind, body, um, and as a company that does it, there's apps that people have for that. I usually follow the rule of, wanting to have more productivity and better sleep. So I listen to binaural beats when I go to sleep, and I'm very, very careful to only listen to beats that are in alpha because I want to be in an alpha state because that's the state that you're most creative in. Thomas Edison used to hold a ball in his hand. As soon as his hand, when he went to sleep, to take a nap, because naps are great for you. Excuse me. And the ball would drop. Well, they found that the ball drops when you start to go from alpha to theta, and then that would wake him up. And that's when he, could write down, some of the things he wanted to do for his inventions. He wrote about this. So that one piece for that, and for stress management, the other thing is like eat really clean and eat really well. People used to ask me in my office, I had a very high volume practice when I had it on Cape Cod. And people used to ask me all the time, like, Dr. Pat, how do you do this? I mean, I see your car at 8 o'clock at night, at 6 o'clock. It's like you don't leave here. And I didn't. I started at 8 o'clock in the morning. And when I finished work, I was at 6 o'clock at night. I wasn't tired. First off, I was doing something that I loved. Secondly, it's just like I ate really, really well, and I ate very, very clean. So I didn't eat sugar. And if I did have something at lunchtime, it's like I found out, that I can't tolerate wheat bread. And it's not because of the wheat, it's just because there was, in that kind of bread, it has a higher density of sugar for it. So for me, it blew me out. The other day I was with somebody and they said, hey, do you want a cup of coffee? We're at this vineyard up in the Finger Lakes. That's where I'm at right now. And so, when we had this coffee, a half hour later, I just said, I got to go to sleep because of that coffee blew out my blood sugar levels. So, and I normally don't have coffee out unless I know where the bean was sourced. I drive people crazy. Like, well, where's the source at? And then if I, ask that question and it's not from someplace that I'm interested in, then I'll just drink water, and so it's just like that. My thing for stress management is you've got to eat really well. You've got to move. My 5 pillars of health would apply to this. You have to have, an excellent diet and nutrition. They're one and the same. You need proper exercise. You don't move, you're going to die. Proper sleep, anywhere from 7 to 8 hours a night. And being able to fall asleep and go back to sleep. Just leave your phones off. Whatever is going to go on, you can figure it out at 8 o'clock in the morning or whenever you get up, and then, positive mindset and positive mental attitude. And then the last pillar is, structure function, which is proper, posture and, proper biomechanics. If you don't have good structure, you're not going to have good function. So being able to sit up, without any back support, like on a chair, will tell you whether or not you have good posture. Put a book on top of your head and see where it falls off right away, and then learn how to balance that book again so that you can hold it on top of your head for 3 minutes without, work up to 3 minutes so that you can do that. Or take a screenshot of yourself on your, when you're on your next Zoom, like take a screenshot, see where you're at, look at what your face looks like, and then sit up straight and take it again, and then so that you're looking like it's straight ahead. It makes a difference, about, how you're filmed and being camera ready, especially if you're in a boardroom, you're the mother of the bride, the father of the bride, of the groom, the bride herself, groom himself. I've had those people take my facial exercise course just because they wanted to get better posture, and also look younger for those special events. And it's like for the C-suite or the speaker from stage, and people who support that, it's that part of that program, helps them. That awareness about your health and about how, because when you look good, you feel good, your body responds to that. And I also talked, you talked a little bit about, astrology, and what I started doing when I had my practice, and I found this really to be, it was interesting how it kind of more played out to be true than not. And so I would always tell people, I said, let's figure out what your intuitive age is. And so I would ask them how old they are, and then I would ask them, like how old, what's their age of maturity, and so, you'd get a number on that. And then I would ask them, and this is the hard one, is because people want to rationalize this, and it's not a rational question. The question is, how old are your blood vessels? And so when you say, like, how old are my blood vessels? Once, I'm like 70 or 50 or whatever, and you say, like, but no, but how old are your blood vessels? How old do you think they are? How old do they feel to you in your mind? It's not a logical question. It's really intuitive, and it brings you back to that wonderful childlike things that you used to do when you had imaginary friends and all that stuff like that. It brings you back to that intuitive thing, like, when you're going to call somebody and they call you first, and you're going, oh my God, I was just going to call you. It's using that level of intuition to get that number. So a lot of times, and I'm just going to use myself as an example, it's just like, if I, take that, how old are my blood vessels? It's just like I'm at like maybe like today I'm at 39. And so, um, but I usually say my intuitive age is, 43, and that I'm 70. And so if you see my picture in LinkedIn, or even, in Facebook, that is when someone sees, like when I go to meet somebody and this guy asked me this the other day. I was talking to her, going to do a podcast with him, and he was looking at my picture, and he said, "Do you have a current picture?" I said, "I go when I go to meet somebody from like from LinkedIn, for a business meeting, whatever. They recognize me before I recognize them." And she just goes like, "You look great." I mean, it's just so. But I eat well. I eat clean. I do my facial exercises, and I move every day. So it's just like, and I'm really conscious about how I balance my foods out with protein, fats, and carbohydrates. Do it like, on holidays, I can tell you I spend in the last week. But but I'm very like conscious of, like, I don't have any, like, I don't crash if I eat the wrong thing. So a lot of times when people eat the wrong thing, they want to go to sleep an hour and a half, or else they feel really sleepy, or they feel bloated, or their stomach hurts. Your body gives you, your face doesn't lie. And your body doesn't lie to you either. You just have to be open to listen to what it's trying to tell you. And if you don't know how to listen to it very well, then you hire someone like me who can help you recognize signs and symptoms, also create diets, to what works for you. It's very individualized, what works for you, so that you can, think better, feel better, and move better, and elevate your health, your habits, and your happiness.
Absolutely. And okay, even though I've gone longer than I want to, hey, I've been off the air for so long, maybe I can make my shows a little longer than normal just to make up for it. There is one more subject I want to talk about since I just noticed it: acupuncture. You're involved in that. It's one of the pointers on
Wow.
healthcare without a prescription. So I just don't need to spend a whole segment on this, just a nice little short little semi segment here. Could you please just silence the critics and explain why acupuncture works?
Well, acupuncture is like, it's this, I, saw an image of the first acupuncture needle that was from 6 BC, and it was a piece of jade. And so there are points that when people have in reflexology on the hands and the feet, that when they're stimulated, they improve function, or, make a function worse, in your internal body. So there's circuitry that's in your body that runs, and there's certain places that, there's meridians that run. So for instance, the lung meridian, if you remember the story about my coach, who had stage 4 cancer, the point that I tested on him was where the lung meridian exits the body and goes from internal to external. And so there's certain points that when we talked, you mentioned constipation before. Well, there's a specific point for constipation, and constipation in Chinese medicine can be, from interior to exterior problems. It could be hot or cold. It could be, dry or wet. There's different things, and how it gets treated is based upon what you find by the diagnosis. So in Chinese medicine, they look at areas for indications for your health on your tongue. They feel pulses. There's 6 pulses that they feel in each wrist. So there's 3 on one side, 3 on the other side. And they look at your face for clues for what's going on in your health. So there's certain areas on your body that relate to certain organ systems. And, so there's a whole vast network going on in your body that one thing relates to the other. And each muscle system, like I said, there's 15 muscles, for example, in the face that I focus on in my facial exercise program. And the reason why people's faces sag anyway is because they have like head tilt. I mean, 5 degrees of tilt, it's like nodding your head yes to somebody, adds 11 to 12 pounds per square inch on your cervical spine. So if your head gets, that's a new normal for you. You're suddenly carrying around a bowling ball. So if you lose 10, you're carrying around a 22 bowling ball, that your body's accommodated to as a new normal. And like, you don't want to do that. You want to be able to put your head back between your shoulders and have better alignment. So, but when you do that, your meridians work very well. When you don't do that, then your face ages way before it's time. So just take a picture of yourself from front and from back and from either side. And if your ears are not over your shoulders, not, a lot of people have them in front of their shoulders, then the rest of the spine has dysfunction in it, which are going to stress not only your health, but also in Chinese medicine, you're going to stress those meridians that relate to those pieces also. But there are like meridians for like all the major organ systems, like the lungs, the liver, the gallbladder, the urinary bladder, the kidney, the large intestine, small intestine. And just to make a comment about the intestinal tract, it's not a tube from beginning to end. Along that tube, certain things have to happen. And when that one cell layer lining gets damaged, then your food leaves your body and gets into your blood system a lot sooner than it's supposed to, which creates sometimes eventually into an autoimmune issue, because those toxins that you get in that have got to go to the liver, which job is not to detox. The job is to take the toxins and put them out of your body. And they do that by putting those toxins from the liver to the intestinal tract into the toilet, or if they're small enough, they go to the kidney, the bladder, and into the toilet. So, there's that, for the gut health, that one piece is just not like one whole thing. There's certain areas where certain enzymes and coenzymes are necessary in order to break your food down so you get the best nutrients from that. And if it's damaged, it goes through a lot sooner than that, which stresses the whole system. And then when your whole system gets really stressed, and this is even in Chinese medicine too, it goes to blood, brain, bone, and fat. So what's interesting about that is that those are all deep issues and deep problems in Chinese medicine. And you can feel that in the pulse. You can see it in people's faces, and you can see it by other symptomatology that, that are specific questions that you ask for Chinese medicine when you're treating somebody.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you went into a little bit of detail on it. Simply explaining why acupuncture works is not really that simple. It has a lot to do with it. And well, thank you for getting into that. So with that being said, I do want to bring this to a close. The lousy attention span factor is the is the kicker there. So, but this was fascinating indeed when it comes to interviews and information. Yeah, I do have to upload the interview I did yesterday before yours. That's only fair because they were on my show before you were. So, but I will try to get that one on and this one on as soon as possible. Got a New Year's dinner tonight with folks, but after that, I do expect to get at least one of these interviews up. So, thank you very much for coming on. Anything you want to get out before we bring this to a close?
If anybody's interested, I have an upcoming course that's program that's starting at the end of January for the facial exercise course, and it's a 12-week program that helps you turn back the hands of time, and if you want to have more information about that, they can direct message me. I have a workshop coming up on the 7th that you can register for using www.askpat. Let me say that again, www.askpat.org. You can register there for that. It's a free workshop and talks about health. It talks about, a lot of different pro tips in relationship to, your health and, and how you feel and look, so that you can thrive. That's like one thing that you can, specifically do. Reach out to me if you have any personal questions on my website. On the front page, there's a microphone. You can connect to that microphone and hit it, and you can record your question, and that will come to me, and you can catch me on my socials.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you are on Facebook. I did communicate with you through there before. So, thank you very much, Dr. Boulogne. Rhymes with Cologne. Not going to pronounce it the wrong way. It's not the city in Italy. It's not that other thing. But yes, thank you. And I will make sure I include the doctor when I upload this interview in the video title, because when anytime someone's a doctor, it's only out of courtesy that you should acknowledge that, and I will make sure I do that for you. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
It was a great interview. Take care and good luck in 2025. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Happy New Year.